Today I am delivering to the lecture about the preliminary agro-techniques of introduced medicinal plant species. So what are the preliminary agro-techniques? Agro-techniques are actually the agricultural methods, techniques or practices that are applied for the cultivation of the introduced medicinal plant species. Introduced medicinal plants are those plants that they brought from other regions to your own regions. If you are interested to cultivate medicinal plant of Africa in your country, in your regions, you must know about the agricultural techniques and the practices that are needed for their cultivation. Here, what are the agro-techniques? Agro-techniques are also known as agricultural techniques, refer to various methods and practices used in the cultivation of crops, especially the medicinal plants, and the management of agricultural system. So these are the techniques or the methods that are applied for cultivation of medicinal plants either in the form of botanical gardens, farmhouse, agricultural lands, and other areas. These techniques involve a wide range of activities such as the land preparation, planting, irrigation, fertilization, pest control and harvesting. So these are the important steps before you are going to start the cultivation of medicinal plants to your country, your regions. Here you see in this diagram there is a smart techniques, smart agricultural techniques, because this era is basically the era of equipments, era of digitization and smart technologies. Here you see the drone is going to spread the biofertilizers, biopest fertilizers, and the water sprinkling, and so many equipments are available for the cultivation of medicinal plants. So this is the different methods than the traditional methods for cultivation. Preliminary agro-techniques of introduced medicinal plants. The agro-techniques of introduced medicinal plant species may vary depending upon the specific plant species for its growing requirements. It's very important that every medicinal plant have their own specific requirement for water, minerals, nutrients, land, organic matter in the soil. So the species may vary from species to species depending upon the requirements. However, some general preliminary agro techniques can be discussed in this lecture. Here you see in this diagram there is a smart agriculture technology, that is a you know that there is a combined cultivators, combined harvester machines. They are nowadays used for the cultivation of the medicinal plants. So these combined machines, they make the rows, beds and furrows for cultivation of medicinal plants. So this is a modern technology for the cultivation of the medicinal plant in order to generate the feedstock, the raw material from medicinal plants that is used for medicinal purposes, that is used for the preparation of the commercial and traded drugs. There are following steps, there are following important areas for the agro techniques. First important step is the site selection. It is important to select a specific site for a specific species depending upon the soil type, drainage, exposure to the sunlight, which is suitable for the growth of a specific medicinal plant species. When you are planning to cultivate some species in your region, in your country, in your farmhouse, in your botanical garden, it is important to select a specific site for specific species, because specific species may varies for their site selection, for their production, for their cultivation. Site selection is a very important and critical for medicinal herb productions. The site should have excellent water drainage, good air movements. It should be located where you can access easily with equipment for planting, weed control and harvesting technology. So it is important to select those sites which is in your control, that has a good quality of the soil, the drainage of the water, air movements, and it is easily accessible for your cultivation, for your planting plants. And it's important to select a specific site for your medicinal plant. Number two is the soil preparation. When you have to select the site, and the second step is the soil preparation. To prepare the soil by removing the weeds, because unwanted weed must be removed before cultivation. Remove the rocks and other debris in the soil and add the organic matter and fertilizer to improve the soil fertility and the texture. This is very important for the good quality productions from the soil, from the field, when you are going to prepare a soil according to the well practices, agricultural techniques and methods. It's important that nowadays the people use the organic fertilizer, they use the biofertilizer, so to improve the soil fertility and the texture. Here you see in this diagram, someone has prepared the soil with a eradication of the weeds, and they added some bioorganic fertilizer to make the soil more productive, more producible for the cultivation of the medicinal plant that contain a rich organic matter, rich humus that is needed for the good production of the raw material from medicinal plants. The third step is the planting. When you have selected the site, when you prepare the soil, and the third step is the cultivation of the plants. Plant that medicinal plant species in rows, beds at appropriate depth and spacing. This is very important to cultivate medicinal plant, specific medicinal plant according to the scientific procedures or the methods in order to achieve a good quality production of the feedstock. Waters and the plants immediately after planting. When you have did a cultivation, you must give the water immediately after planting the plants. Here you see in this diagram, there's a excellent preparation of the soil in the form of beds, rows and furrows, and there's a planting the plants in these furrows with a rich organic matter. Fourth one is the irrigation. Irrigate the plants regularly based on their water requirements, because plants may vary from species to species depending upon their water requirement. The frequency and the duration of irrigation may be depending upon the climate and the soil condition. So it is very important to adopt the modern irrigation technology for depending upon the climate and soil condition of your area where you are planning to cultivate the medicinal plants. Here you see in this diagram, this is a modern irrigation technology, that is a sprinkle irrigation technology, drip irrigations, and this is a need of the time to adopt the modern, up-to-date, advanced, smart agricultural techniques, that is smart agricultural practices for production of the medicinal plant in the field. After irrigation, it's very important to use the fertilizers. And nowadays, the world is moving toward the natural world again. That is, they use the organic fertilizer. The organic fertilizer, they may be provided to the cultivated medicinal plant depending upon their time and rate to provide the necessary nutrients for the growth of the plants. It's very important to provide timely these organic or biofertilizer to medicinal plants in order to produce good quality. To avoid the chemical fertilizer, because chemical fertilizer, when you apply to your cultivated medicinal plants, they come to their food chain, so they have side effects. So it is important to prepare the biofertilizer. Now the world is moving to prepare the biofertilizer either from their agricultural waste, either from the different plant parts, either roots, stems, leaves and flowers, that are their source is a organic, so they have no side effect and they don't affect our food chain. Here you see in this diagram that the prepared biofertilizers, the bioorganic fertilizers, and they are preferred for the growth, for the nutrients requirements of the medicinal plant and production of the medicinal plants at the feedstock by using the organic and natural fertilizer. Weed control, it is another important area that must be kept in mind when you have a planning for cultivation, to control the unwanted weeds, because unwanted weeds sometimes they are dangerous to your cultivated medicinal plant. They compete for food, they compete for space, they compete for air, they compete for land. So it is important to control the unwanted weeds, eradicate the weeds either by mechanical method, by chemical methods, or reduce the competition of the water and the nutrient requirements. And nowadays, some people they use the chemical pesticides, chemical herbicides to control these weeds. But I suggest you to control the weeds by using the bioherbicides. That is the herbicide, the plant's origins. Either you can use a number of medicinal plants, for example, neem, that is the Azadirachta, indica, Milia, Azadirect, and number of other medicinal plants that they are used to prepare the natural weedicides that they are used to control the unwanted weeds from your medicinal plant field. Here you see in this slide a mechanical weed controls. Mechanical weed controls, you know that the traditional methods, either hand pulling, either machines, or some burning process, and these are plastic mulches. So these are the different mechanical methods. But now the world is moving towards the smart agriculture, smart resilient agriculture, that they use the natural weedicides to control the weeds from your field. And the seventh step is very important for the pest and disease control. It is very important to monitor the plants regularly for the pest and disease, because it is important to produce, to get the feedstock that is free from pest, that is free from disease, because this feedstock of medicinal plant further use for the traditional uses, either use for the modern uses, either use for the preparation of the natural drugs by the pharmaceutical industry. So your raw material that is raised from your field should be free from pest and disease. Apply appropriate measures such as the biological or chemical or cultural control methods to control the pest and disease. And it's very important that you use the biopesticides. The biopesticides are those pesticides that are prepared from such medicinal plants that they have a strong antibacterial, antifungal, and anti-insect properties. So these biologically controlled pesticides can be used to produce disease and a pest-free raw material from your medicinal plants. And the eighth step is very important, that is the harvesting. Harvesting is the important process that when your crop is ready for harvesting, it is important to harvest your feedstock or medicinal plant raw material at appropriate time. The time for harvesting is very important, because medicinal plants are the synthetic chemistry. They contain primary and secondary metabolites. Some metabolites they prepared at the time of maturation, at the time of maturity of the plant species. So you have to select an appropriate time for collection, for harvesting of these raw materials, depending upon your targeting secondary metabolites that are used for the further that leads to the development of the drugs or the preparation of the natural medicine from these medicinal plants. So the harvesting depends upon the plant parts. It is intended to use appropriate tools and techniques to minimize the damage of the plant material. So modern and smart agricultural tools can be used to harvest these raw materials. Nowadays, there's an era of the machines and the technologies and the smart harvesting equipment. So you can use the smart equipment for collection, for harvesting of the raw material in order to avoid or minimize the damage of the plant material. And the ninth step is very important. After harvesting, it is important to follow the post-harvesting process technologies or the techniques. According to the WHO, World Health Organization have given the good harvesting technologies, good harvesting practices, and good laboratory practices for after collection of the raw material. So you have followed these good laboratory and good harvesting techniques for processing of the harvested plant materials for future use, either for drying, grinding, extraction, and storage, and it is used for the further experimental work, either for the chemical and the biological screening and the extraction of the active ingredient from these medicinal raw materials that leads to prepare the drugs by the pharmaceutical industry. So the post harvesting process is very important. That is actually the quality assurance of the raw material. So it is important to follow up these scientific quality assurance guidelines by WHO to collect, to harvest your raw material, to store your raw material for further processing, either grinding, drying, or extraction of the active ingredient for the preparation of drugs. Here you see in this diagrams that is a good harvesting techniques for the processing of the raw material, that is a post-harvesting raw material, that is processing of the medicinal plants, the well-equipped and well scientifically followed methods as per the WHO guidelines in order to use this raw material for medicinal application. Here you see in this diagram, this is a complete diagram, that is the raw material from field to the industry. So this is a very important that involve the local communities, the agricultural experts, the scientists who are working on medicinal plant. The first you follow the scientific method and smart technology for the cultivation of the medicinal plant, then the collection of the raw material, that's the harvesting technologies, then the extraction of the important secondary metabolites that obtained from these medicinal plants by using certain well equipments, and then you have to go to these active ingredient to the pharmaceutical industries and the herbal industries for the production of the natural drugs. So this is a complete picture, that the material from field to the industry. So this is basically a triplet models between the farmers, scientists, industrialist. So this is a venture that is important for the successful production of the drugs from the medicinal plant, that is involving the farmers, scientists who did experiments on the biological and chemical screening of these medicinal plants, and the industrialists who prepare scientifically the drugs from this raw material or the active ingredients. It is important to note that the agro-techniques for introduced medicinal plant species may require modification based on a specific plant species and the local climate and the soil conditions. So these agro-techniques may vary from species to species, varies from area to area, region to region, and country to country, depending upon the local climate and the soil condition. It is advisable to consult with the local agricultural experts for extension agents for guidance and appropriate agro-techniques for specific medicinal plant cultivation, harvesting, post-harvesting, and production technology. Thank you so much for attending this lecture. It's a basic lecture for agro-techniques, agricultural technology. So this lecture is a very useful and significant for scientists, for students who are doing research on medicinal plants, and the scientists who are working on medicinal plant, and the agriculturists who are working on the cultivation of medicinal plant as a cash crop, and the industrialists who get the raw material from the agriculture for the production of the natural drugs for the commercialization, globalization, and the layman and the community who use these natural medicine for the health benefits. And then these medicinal plants, they can play a very important roles to the community, to the industries, to the agriculturals, to the science, education, community, social acceptability, and the trade and the socio-economic uplifting. Thank you once again for your patience and tolerance to learn about the agro techniques about the medicinal plants.